So I'll try to convey the following points in my session. So one is that because of IoT, the privacy problem has become a lot more complex, and the existing syntactic methods of providing privacy are not going to work. Okay, that's the first thing I want to convey. Next, we have been researching in this for now more than a decade, and we believe that there are two plausible and probably complementary approaches. One is we need to bring more semantic methods for protecting privacy. But I will not talk about that because there is a paucity of time. I'll talk about the second part of the whole privacy protection, which we call fair usage privacy control, right? And we have been hearing about that. In fact, morning speaker in the plenary also talked about that once my data has been shared, how do I know for what purpose it has been used? And if I can know it, then maybe it will help you build a lot more trust. Okay? So that's the title of my talk. Of course, a pun is intended on the word tense. Okay? So please stay with me, and hopefully we have, after I'm done, maybe 5 minutes for question and answer. Okay? And then I'm around, we can discuss more. So first is, let's separate out what problem we are discussing, okay? Because many people end up confusing security and privacy. So we can see here that there's a picture of man in the middle attack on the right. Two users are trying to communicate and somebody is trying to break that communication. What you observe is that users and attackers are different. While in privacy, user is the attacker. So it's a fundamentally very tricky problem because whatever encryption, authorization, authentication, all those nice security controls that you had built to keep bad guys out, right? They are okay, but the privacy problem starts after that good guy has come in, okay? And that's where the problem is. So for what purpose this user is using the data decides whether this is a good user or an attacker. So existing methods really don't work. And what the fundamental problem we have to solve is what data we share with the user so that user can actually make meaningful use of it, so the data has a utility, but at the same time, the privacy of data subjects is respected. Okay? So it's a tricky problem because you can see there are two extremes. I mean, one extreme is that you share data as is, and it gives you full utility, but probably no privacy. And the other extreme is you don't share anything, or you share something very fictitious, and it can give you full privacy, but probably no utility, right? And you want to find a middle ground where you can get best of both. And let's be sort of modest here. There are possible scenarios where you have to sacrifice one over the other, okay? And those probably then become kind of trade-off decisions. And that's also we have been hearing that every individual probably have to take, okay? So how is this problem currently solved, okay? So privacy is a very interesting sort of area to work in because it's probably it's technology problem definitely, but that's probably the last thing. It's a very sort of social, cultural kind of thing. It's definitely a fundamental right, in probably all recent civilizations. And it's something definitely legal too. So there have been nice philosophies around privacy, and one very popular philosophy that at least we as computer scientists have followed is called blending in crowd, okay? So let's just stay with me. So for example, let's say that if our data record looks like data record of many other people, right, then it's very difficult to single us out. Okay? My popular example is US taxpayers record. Even if I remove all identifying columns from this taxpayer record and just look at taxpayer column, I hope you all will agree that Bill Gates' record still could be identified because he is highest taxpayer. Okay? So if you are an outlier, right, then it's much easier to sort of single you out, right, identify you. But if you are an average Joe, then it's much harder. Okay? And this picture is probably trying to tell you this is Bill Gates, okay, and rest are us. Okay? So that's what they do. So when you hear all kinds of current privacy technique, the underlying philosophy is that I know personally identifiable information. That could be your national ID, that could be your address, phone number, whatnot. I have that list with me. It's essentially a static list. I analyze that, and then I try to massage that data so that we all blend in. Okay? And that's the whole logic. But the big assumption is that I know what is PII. Okay? And we'll see how that is quickly changing. So quickly, not a sales pitch, but quickly, this is the work we have been doing over a decade, and we have built lots of cool privacy technologies which allow the end user to set up kind of right privacy utility trade-off to get best of both. I'm not going to talk about them. Let me quickly jump to the latest problem, thanks to IoT. So what's happening with IoT? So there are two key observations we have. One is that PII is no more static, and I'm going to show you two examples following this slide. So PII itself has become a moving target. Okay, we didn't have Fitbits a few years ago, right? We all are carrying mobile with GPS on, so there is a lot of location data being collected. We all have social media presence, social site presence. We are pushing out a lot of information there. So many places where we are leaving the data crumbs, as they call them, that are becoming our PII. And this has one more problem. So if you look at this, if number of attributes about me are growing, right? This is called curse of dimensionality. More the dimensions there are, more are the chances that I'm going to be unique. Okay? So for example, a quick example is if we only have gender attribute for this room, maybe there are 50% females and 50% male, nobody stands out. But if you start adding nationality, age, company you represent, role, and so on, I'm sure all of us are going to be unique. Okay? So you can imagine that one problem, privacy problem, one reason privacy problem is becoming trickier is because the number of attributes about us that could be called PII is growing. Okay? The other thing is, this is not just growing horizontally, it's also exploding vertically. Okay? So, for example, I'm new to Helsinki and last 2 days I'm here, I have kept my GPS on, so some server is collecting my location information second by second. Okay? So this information is growing vertically. So as morning Doc was saying, we are in the information age, and some information age we had said that world is a database and each of us is a tuple. We are saying now that world is a database and each of us is a table. Okay? And this tuple to table transformation actually making privacy problem even tougher to handle. Okay? So I want to give you two quick examples from the IoT space, hopefully to convey you that existing methods are not working and something new is needed. So one is from the smart energy meter space. Probably many countries have them now. They are very useful for accurate billing, energy efficiency advice, and so on. You can see that the pattern of usage vary. So here is a Friday pattern after office hours, family is at home, so you see a different pattern on Saturday, right? Fine. What can this aggregate information reveal about an individual or a family? That's the question. And now I'll show you how. So there's a lot of research. Any gadget that is coming in the market, I can rip it apart, I can analyze it, and I can know what kind of energy consumption signature that gadget has. So if I have that, it's become a very simple mathematical problem to explain the given aggregate data, right? And I can do that, I can disaggregate it, and I can know what kind of activities are happening within that house, right? So this is actually revealing your pattern of living, and then I can correlate that, and not only I would know the pattern of living, I probably would know what the composition is there for the family, who is at home at what particular time, and so on, right? So you can see that simply by making that table of information available, I'm going to learn so much about your family life. Next example, okay, again from the IoT space, Internet of Things. So this is from driverless cars. Believe me, I come from India, and it won't happen in India at any point in time. We can't even drive with drivers in the car. So, but maybe it's possible in some other countries, like Singapore probably has now a driverless taxi, okay? So what happens? So now again, this particular car is connected, okay? It's connected to satellites, it's connected to mobile towers, and it is collecting your location information, okay? So the big question is, can this car, just by knowing your location, spy on you, okay? And this is a beautiful study that was done by American Civil Liberties Union. These guys have been fighting privacy battle against US government, okay? And let's see what. So I'm going to show you a snippet of that study, but the whole study is available, okay, at this link, and you can take a look at it later. So first thing is, I can take a Google map, I can start plotting these things, okay, and I would know your location by day. Fine, good. Now I want to build a table, so let's see. I can start doing this for your all trips, right, throughout the year, okay. It starts getting more complex now. Now I'm a geek. When I see a table, I feel like writing queries. So I'm going to write some queries now. So first query I write is to find your visit to a particular address, okay? And you essentially sort of get that kind of subset of information, the dates, when you arrived, when you departed, and so on. Very interesting, okay? And you can see how table has having an effect. How about finding the top 10 places you visited during the last year? And you can see here, just stare at this. First one, 523 M Street, right? 348 unique days, about 12-13 hours spent every day, right? Looks like person's residence, yes? The second one is office building. So it's probably his workplace, yes? What about the fourth one? 246 Maple Road. It's a residence, right? 15 unique days visited, maybe every time 8-9 hours spent. Actually, this question always gets very interesting answers. Japanese once told me that it's some relatives. Indians say parents' place. Australians told me mistress. Okay? So it's good, it's a cultural problem, you can see. But whatever it may be, you would agree that I am learning some of your sensitive relations, okay? Whatever they may be. More interestingly now, if we start combining this data, not just from one car, but across multiple cars, right? I can start learning your friendship graph. Because when friends meet, they hang out together, they are going to park their vehicles, their cars, in the same parking area or a nearby location, right? So now I start correlating this, and I learn your friendship graph. And this is a real friendship graph, okay? Unlike Facebook, where you might accept people just by courtesy. So now the point is, not only I know your friendship graph, depending on where you are hanging out, I would also know what interests you have. So it could be like maybe a sporting arena, it could be a pub, it could be a place of worship, it could be a political party's office. I would know what interests you. The example ACL you had was, you can see here, all of them are suspected for driving under influence. So if you have 5 close friends who are suspected for driving under influence, their conclusion was very likely you are also the one to be suspected for driving under influence. And those are the things you start learning, okay? The big studies there, I really urge, maybe this is the great and best crowd, to go back and look at this study and think about it. So what does this say? It basically says that the sort of identity disclosure, which was a big risk in the privacy, continues to stay there. Okay, so if someone knows your personal information, they might impersonate you, right? And that could lead to problems and troubles for you. That risk continues. But with IoT kind of phenomena, what we are saying is even the behavioral privacy is under big threat. Because if people have that table full of information about you, they can learn so much about you and your household that can put you at some risk. And this was the conclusion. So there's a nice report by Pew Research Center. They talked to lots of experts, and the conclusion is unanimous. And that's why I guess we all are here trying to think about this problem, that if you don't address privacy, then you won't realize the full potential of IoT, because many people will choose to stay out. Okay? Now what happens is, maybe we have some people here who smoke, but probably they do read on that cigarette packet that smoking is injurious to health, and they still smoke. Likewise, the question was, if now people know that privacy is at risk, do they care? Do they want to do anything about it, right? And here is an interesting survey. So this survey was done by Oxford, and this is 2014 survey. So what they did was, the same group had done a very similar survey in 2006. They basically talked to people from very different demographic profiles, and they wanted to know, are they concerned about their online privacy? And what they had found in 2006 survey, that chart is not here, that the young adults, that is 18 to 24 age group, does not care, okay? They don't give any damn to privacy. They in fact want to happily announce whatever they are doing on the social sites, right? Because they want to come out as fun-loving, extrovert people, okay? This was 2006. 8 years later, when they looked at this data from Australia, US and UK, they found that that particular age group is the most serious, most concerned about their online privacy. In fact, they are doing everything in their control, trying to manipulate privacy controls on those sites to manage their privacy, okay? And this is a total fail, okay? This wasn't there. So people do care, and something has to be done, okay? So now, coming from bit computing background, what kind of ideas? And I'm sure there are many other ideas, and we are going to hear them from my colleagues here on the panel. But there are some ideas that we think definitely go some way towards addressing this problem. And we are already seeing workshops on these topics in this particular conference. First is this whole infonomics, right? The value of information. It's likely that organizations are unnecessarily collecting a lot of information. It probably does not bring any value to them. At the same time, the consumers on the ground, people like us, do not know what value our information provides to the organization, right? So some methodical, systematic study and research is required to figure this out. And we had a very interesting academic workshop yesterday, where a lot of nice papers were presented and discussed on this. The other one is a kind of deployment model, which probably also has a repercussion on how the business is to be done. And I was very happy to see that the same idea was mentioned in just the previous session by DGME people. So the idea is, do I need all data? That's a question I think organizations have to ask. And one possibility is that you may actually take only a sample data, right? So you don't collect data from 1 million people. You collect it probably from 1,000 people. You use that data to whatever analysis you want to do, whatever models you want to build, and that you can do on your central server. But what then you do is, you push out these models, okay? So that they can run locally, maybe on your mobile devices, on your smart meters, with the data still in your custody, okay? And one has to see, I mean, maybe again, this may not work always, but it has inherently inside it some business model. For example, when I'm sampling, I need to figure out whose data to take sample, how to incentivize them to give that data, right? And is this good enough data for me to build a very good model, okay? So there are possibilities here. Last but not the least, I talked about privacy controls initially, which were more around data masking, scrubbing, and so on. They are preventive type. We see that there is a big need now for another class of privacy control, which we call fair usage privacy control. And the idea is that whatever said and done, ultimately, you have to make some data available to organizations so that they can serve you, okay? I think people are more than happy if organizations use that data only for those purposes for which they are collecting it, okay? But we have to somehow build that trust, and we believe that a class of control or a technology that we are calling fair usage privacy control might be able to do it, okay? Well, so what have we done? So we have put a booth actually, and if you have time, please go and take a look. We have been building this technology. We call it Crystal Ball because it allows you to control data at a remote distance, okay? And the idea is very simple, okay? So there are two parts to our solution, okay? One is intent capture. So what we do is, imagine this now that, let's say, some bank wants to now use Crystal Ball. What this bank has to do is, it has to announce on its portal what personal attributes it has about you, okay? So this is a list that they are going to publish. You can visit that portal, log in, and then give your preferences, how you want each of those pieces of information to be handled, okay? So this is totally flipping how privacy is currently done. Currently, enterprises are pushing policy at us, which most of us don't really read, right? There was a very interesting study done by Stanford, which Google actually stopped. So what they were looking at is, how much time do we take to read privacy policies of all various different sites we visit and apps we use in a normal day? Anybody wants to guess the answer?
Wasn't it something like 15 seconds or less?
We spend 15 seconds and less, but if you were to read it, it takes 1 month.
Yeah.
Okay? That's totally ridiculous, and a lot of it is by malicious design. Okay? So what this does is, it flips the game. We are talking about privacy, which is a very personal thing, right? So we are talking here about having a very personalized privacy. I'm going to go and tell everyone that these are my personal attributes that you have. This is how I want you to treat them, okay? This is one-time thing. Of course, you can go and change it anytime. The other part of our solution is that for any inside processing that happens on your data, right, we have built some magic software code which basically intercepts and figures out what's happening with your data. It is going to be communicated back to you, okay? So that you as a user are constantly getting notified on how your data is being used, for what purpose, from where, when, why, and all that, okay? So here's a quick snapshot of it, and you can see the whole demo later. So what happens is, imagine that this is a sort of CRM application that bank employees using to help me, okay? This is me, and you can see that privacy by default. So a lot of personal things have come pre-masked, okay? They are not available. If that person wants to access some information, let's say that my address, right? They have to click on it, and then there is a pop-up box that says, why do you need it, okay? So they have to probably give their reason, okay? And there are some purposes here you can mention. And this information is passed back to me on an app that I'm carrying on my device. And I can give real-time consent, real-time approve, disapprove for this, okay? So the full demo there, if you have time, just look at it. I just want to set the stage for my next speaker here by saying one comment. I talked about being able to track access to information when you have already shared it with an enterprise. It is within an enterprise, okay? Now, my next set of speakers will focus probably more on those pieces of information that are still with you and how you want to release them, how you want to share them with the enterprise in first place. With that, I'm going to stop. Thank you.
Let's take one question, quick one, if there's anybody. Or we can, of course, pick the one from the back channel. So, is the sheer amount of data related to IoT a mission impossible from this perspective?
No, it's true. So there are some strange research findings. I'll share a couple of them. So MIT group has done this study. So one study they did was they looked at location data for millions of people, okay? And let's say I point to 4 of those location data and say that they belong to one single individual. Just with that, with more than 95% accuracy, they can figure out among that anonymized whatever data set, what other locations point to the same individual, okay? So there are studies like this coming, okay? So it's not clear, and of course these researchers are going to help us. It's not clear that which data we have to protect at what granularity, okay? But I think it's a sort of race. I mean, we have to keep up with it and we have to try our best. One other comment I want to make is that if you have too many personal attributes, this is also a point I have seen in discussions in other sessions, will people be able to do all this setting? Will they be able to make all those decisions, right? And we definitely need some machine intelligence to guide and help people, and that we believe is another line of research that has to be carried out.
Okay. Thank you, Sachin. There's one more question, if you quickly.
I was wondering, what type of standards do you see that must come for this to actually take off, or for companies to actually implement systems like this?
It's a magic word, it's called GDPR. Last 2 weeks, we have been going around meeting, so my company has several clients in Europe, maybe 90 plus. We have been going around talking to several clients. See, the GDPR talks about data portability, so they definitely need to build awareness about what data they have about us. That has to be done anyway. And it talks about consumer being more active participant in this whole personal data management than a passive bystander. And these ideas are probably resonating well. Okay? Standards, we are probably a bit far at the moment, but I think just the non-compliance penalties and the fear that GDPR has now created, and it's the rightful one, probably is going to help us.